He had a screwdriver in his locker, ma'am. You know what that means. No. What does that mean? She asked, her voice shaking. The principal didn't blink. Intent to weaponize. We're calling the sheriff. Her 14-year-old son sat in the corner, lips trembling, backpack still unzipped. He didn't speak. He hadn't spoken in 10 minutes. Because he knew, once they said the word weapon, nothing else mattered. The white boy who threw a chair last week? 2 days suspension. Her son? Charged with intent to commit a felony. Before they even called her. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching us from. The call came at 11:37 a.m. No name. Just a school number flashing across her screen. Ms. Harvell, this is Principal Alfred. We need you to come in immediately. Is Dorian okay? There's been an incident. That word. She'd heard it before. It never meant what they claimed it meant. She left work mid-shift. Hairnet still on. Her name tag flipped backward. It took 13 minutes to get there. She ran 2 red lights. Dorian was sitting outside the front office when she arrived. Shoulders hunched. Hoodie zipped to his neck. She dropped to her knees. What happened? He didn't answer. Eyes empty. Like he'd already decided speaking wouldn't matter. Principal Alfred opened the door behind them. Please. Inside. The office was cold. 2 assistant principals sat behind the desk. One took notes. The other just stared. We discovered a screwdriver in Dorian's locker during a routine search, Alfred began. She blinked. A screwdriver? Correct. That's not illegal. He fixes things. Headphones. His bike. Even your vending machine last month. That may be, the assistant principal cut in, but under district policy, it qualifies as potential weaponry. She stood slowly. He's 14, and old enough to understand the consequences of bringing tools that could be used as weapons. You think he brought it to hurt someone? Alfred folded his hands. We think the potential was there. An intent is inferred when context supports it. What context? A previous conflict. Last Thursday. Hallway dispute with another student. She looked at Dorian. You didn't even tell me that. He whispered. It was nothing. The note-taker spoke. Student James Gallagher claimed Dorian said, Don't touch me again, or I'll make you sorry. She turned back to the table. You're going to try to ruin a kid's life over a tool and a sentence? No one's talking about ruining anything, Alfred said calmly. But given the combination, we've alerted local law enforcement. That's when the air left her lungs. You, what? They're on their way. You called the police? Per policy. You didn't call me first. Alfred didn't answer. She looked at her son again. Still frozen. Still silent. He knew. Because in their world, Dorian wasn't a boy with a screwdriver. He was a threat with a weapon. A knock interrupted the tension. 2 deputies stepped into the room. Uniforms, radios, gloves. The taller one nodded at the table. This him? Alfred answered. Yes. Dorian Harvell. The deputy approached slowly. We need you to stand, son. Her body moved before her brain did. You're not putting your hands on my child. Ma'am, please stay seated, the second officer said. He didn't do anything. He had a screwdriver. Which, combined with the report, Alfred added, suggests potential premeditation. Premeditation, she echoed. You think he was planning something violent? We're just following procedure. Her knees gave out slightly. She sat again. Not because she agreed, but because she understood. In this room, resistance was a weapon too. She watched them place her son in soft restraints. No cuffs. He wasn't under arrest. Not yet. But they wanted him to feel it. To know the rules weren't his. Never had been. And as he walked out, eyes on the floor, lips shut tight, she felt something snap inside her. Not fear. Resolve. They were building a case? So was she. The station smelled like bleach and old carpet. They were led to interview room 3. No windows. 2 chairs. A metal table bolted to the floor. A uniformed officer unhooked Dorian's restraints. Have a seat, kid. She stepped forward. I want to be present. The officer blocked her with a raised palm. He's a minor, ma'am, but the report qualifies this under juvenile threat protocol. Parental presence is not required during preliminary questioning. That's illegal. No, ma'am. It's policy. She looked at Dorian. His face stayed down, like he was trying to disappear into the plastic chair. Another man entered. Different badge. Plain clothes. Recorder in hand. Detective Carl Russo. I'm going to ask you a few questions, Dorian. No hello. No smile. Not even a glance at her. Do you understand why you're here? Dorian didn't answer. Russo leaned in. You brought a weapon to school. It wasn't a weapon, the boy whispered. What was it then? A screwdriver. Why? Dorian hesitated. My headphones broke. I was going to fix them during lunch. Why keep it in your locker? I forgot it was there. Did you plan to use it against anyone? No. Russo flipped a page in his notepad. On Thursday, you had words with James Gallagher. He shoved me. Did you threaten him? Dorian's voice dropped to almost nothing. I said he should leave me alone. The detective leaned back. You said, touch me again and I'll make you sorry. Dorian didn't answer. She moved toward the door. I want a lawyer. The officer outside didn't move. You can request legal representation once formal charges are filed. He's 14. And per statute, if the threat involves a potential weapon, officers may conduct preliminary interviews without counsel. Her hands shook. Then I'm pulling him from this room. Ma'am, sit down or we'll escort you out. She stared at the glass, watched her son shrinking with every word. He was trying not to cry, and he was losing. The interview dragged another 10 minutes. Every answer Dorian gave felt like a trap, a twist, a clue to guilt they were desperate to find. After it ended, they let her in, too late. He was staring at the table, silent, cold. She knelt beside him. Look at me. He didn't move. I'm right here. Finally, he spoke. They think I'm gonna hurt someone. She swallowed. I know, but you're not. And we'll prove it. How? The question was small, but the weight behind it was enormous. She didn't have an answer yet. Not a real one. They were releasing him, but only for now. The report would be passed to juvenile court. And if charges were accepted, Dorian's name would change. Not legally, not on paper, but in the eyes of every teacher, every hallway, every whisper. He wouldn't be Dorian anymore. He'd be the black boy who almost did something. Monday morning came cold and quiet. Dorian hadn't touched his backpack in 3 days. He sat at the table, staring into a dry bowl of cereal. She watched him from the kitchen, phone in hand, waiting. The school hadn't called. She called them. The receptionist transferred her 3 times before a voice finally answered. Ms. Harvell, this is Vice Principal Jenkins. We'd like to schedule a meeting regarding Dorian's reentry. What reentry? He's currently on an interim safety hold. Before returning to class, he'll need to go through a behavioral review. He didn't hurt anyone. This is about maintaining a safe environment. She exhaled. What does the review involve? A panel, 1 counselor, 1 administrator, 1 district rep. You'll be present, of course. When? Today? 2:15 p.m. They were waiting for her. The room was smaller than she expected. Not an office, a conference cell. Long table, plastic chairs, 1 window. Jenkins sat with a binder already open. The counselor, a woman named Ms. Ferris, barely looked up from her laptop. The district representative was last to enter. White, mid-30s. No folder, just a single sheet of paper. We'd like to offer an alternative, he said, before she even sat down. Her body tensed. What kind of alternative? Dorian voluntarily withdraws. No expulsion. No juvenile referral. The file ends here. She blinked. You're asking me to pull him from school. We're offering a chance to avoid a formal mark. What's the mark? The incident would remain on his record. Not as a criminal offense, but as a behavioral risk flag. Dorian looked at her. Confused. Scared. She spoke slowly. So if we stay, you call him a threat. If we leave, you stay clean. Ms. Ferris finally spoke. We think this is best for everyone. Everyone but my son. Jenkins added. Look, Ms. Harvell, I know this is hard. But he made a mistake. What mistake? Bringing something he shouldn't have. Saying something he shouldn't have. No threats. No violence. No intent. You've turned a 14-year-old with a screwdriver into a case study. The district rep placed the form on the table. If you withdraw now, Dorian can transfer to a virtual program. No hearing. No board review. Just a quiet exit. She looked at her son. His hands were in his lap. Head low. Breathing shallow. And she saw it. He already thought it was over. She picked up the paper. Read the first line. Voluntary withdrawal initiated by guardian. Her fingers squeezed the edge until it crumpled. No, she said. Jenkins shifted. Ms. Harvell. No. You don't get to write him out of the story to protect your version of what happened. She turned to Dorian. You didn't do anything wrong. And you're not disappearing. The silence in the room tightened. The district rep stood. We'll move forward with disciplinary proceedings then. Go ahead, she said. Review board meets Thursday. If the panel votes to expel, the juvenile charge remains on the table. They already put it on the table, she replied. I'm just not eating from it. She grabbed Dorian's backpack from the floor. Come on. And as they walked out, Dorian whispered, Am I really going back? She didn't lie. Not yet. But we're not backing down either. Wednesday, for 12 p.m. She was standing in the front office, waiting for a copy of the school's incident policy when she overheard it. Are you sure you don't want to reword your statement, James? You used the word threat, not violence. The voice came from behind the frosted glass door of the counselor's office. She froze. The secretary handed her a clipboard. You can write your request here. But she didn't move. Inside, the voices continued. Look, James. If you just clarify that you felt unsafe, that's enough. A pause. Then a boy's voice, hesitant. I mean, he was mad. I guess. That's understandable. But for the review board, words matter. Unsafe is clearer. She recognized the name. James Gallagher. The same student who claimed Dorian had threatened him. She handed the clipboard back. I'll come back tomorrow. And walked out. Fast. At home, she stared at the printed incident summary. Student A expressed fear after student B made verbal threat. Potential escalation anticipated. She circled 3 words. Fear. Threat. Anticipated. All speculative. Nothing confirmed. But somehow, that had been enough to call the police. She called a number she hadn't used in years, Dorian's old debate coach, Mr. Ridley. He answered after 2 rings. Ms. Harvell, do you remember me? Of course. Dorian could have run circles around half my seniors. I need a favor. Next morning, she waited outside the school cafeteria. Ridley came out holding a laptop bag. I still have access to staff notes, he said. Nothing criminal, but something's wrong. What? They're coaching James Gallagher. How do you know? I saw the counseling log. 2 sessions, both with Miss Ferris. Both referencing narrative reinforcement. She blinked. Narrative. They're building a version that justifies the response. Even if it's not true? He hesitated. They call it safety language. She exhaled slowly. Can you testify? I'm not part of the board, he said. If I speak up, I'll lose my job. She didn't ask again. That night, Dorian sat on the couch with his knees tucked under his chin. Do they believe I'm dangerous? He asked. She sat beside him. They want to believe it. That's different. Why? Because it's easier. To believe I'm bad? To believe they're right. He didn't answer. She reached for his hand. You don't have to prove who you are to people who already decided who you're not. But you do have to speak. I don't want to. I know. She looked him in the eye. But if you don't, they get to speak for you. Thursday would be the board hearing. 5 adults. 2 minutes per witness. 10 minutes for closing. She had no lawyer. No allies in the room. No promises of fairness. But she had her son. And this time, he would speak. Thursday, 3:02 p.m. They sat on opposite sides of a long conference table. Jayla and Dorian on one side. 3 panel members on the other. Principal Alfred, District Rep Calvin, and Ms. Roby, a school board appointee with pearl earrings and a tight smile. There was no audience. No press. No recording. Just silence, paperwork, and power. Alfred began. This is a disciplinary review regarding student Dorian Harvell, age 14, charged with possession of a potential weapon on school grounds and verbal intimidation. He turned a page. Didn't look up. After reviewing the incident report, student statements, and code violations, the panel is now open to responses. Jayla stood. Her voice was steady. Not loud. Not soft. I'm Jayla Harvell, Dorian's mother. Roby nodded slightly. You may speak. She looked around the room. No one here believes my son is dangerous. Calvin raised an eyebrow. They believe he doesn't belong. Not because of what he did, but because of what he could be. Alfred interjected. Ms. Harvell, I'm speaking. The room paused. Even Dorian looked up. You found a screwdriver. A tool. Not a blade. Not a gun. A tool. You matched it with a sentence, one quote, second hand, and decided that was enough to build a threat narrative. Alfred responded, we followed district protocol. Did district protocol include pressuring a witness not to testify? Silence. I have a sworn statement from Devin Carr. He was told by this administration to stay quiet. That things would be complicated if he spoke. Roby's face twitched. That's a serious accusation. Jayla placed a sealed envelope on the table. It's a notarized affidavit. Delivered to the board attorney this morning. Calvin leaned forward. Even so, the presence of the screwdriver isn't enough. not by your own handbook. Page 19. Section 3. It says, and I quote, disciplinary classification as a weapon requires object design and stated intent. Neither exist here. Alfred shifted in his seat. Jayla continued. You want this to be over quietly. You offered withdrawal, transfer, disappearance. You framed it as mercy. She turned to Roby. But silence is not mercy. Roby adjusted her pen. The board will review your statements and issue a vote by tomorrow morning. Jayla nodded. I'll wait. As they stood to leave, Alfred muttered. We're doing what's best for the school. Jayla turned back one last time. No. You're doing what's easiest for you. In the hallway, Dorian whispered, Do you think it worked? She looked at him. I don't know. Then she added, more quietly. But I said everything I came to say. Friday, 10:04 a.m. Jayla opened her inbox and saw the subject line. Disciplinary panel vote, outcome notification. She didn't click it right away. She knew. But Dorian was still asleep in the next room, and she needed to hold it together. When she opened the message, her eyes scanned only one sentence. The panel has determined that permanent expulsion is the appropriate action in this case. No explanation. No apology. Just a sentence. Like he was never meant to be there at all. By noon, the letter had arrived in physical form. Thick envelope. Official seal. It came with a second paper, a court notice. The state intends to proceed with formal charges of school-based threat conduct per Juvenile Code 783.05. Jayla stared at it. They weren't done. They were just getting started. That afternoon, she called the courthouse. Left 3 messages. No return calls. She called the district. Same result. At 4:30 p.m., her phone rang. A woman's voice answered. Ms. Harvell? I'm calling from juvenile intake. I'm the case coordinator for your son's upcoming hearing. Upcoming when? Preliminary hearing is scheduled for Tuesday morning. Virtual. Judge Connors presiding. Jayla exhaled. And what exactly is he being charged with? Intent to threaten bodily harm on a school campus. That's absurd. I'm just the coordinator. No, you're the first person who's spoken to me in days. So I'm going to say this once. A pause. My son didn't threaten anyone. He was searched without cause, judged without evidence, and expelled without hearing his voice. And if this court proceeds with a formal charge, we won't fight it quietly. The voice on the other end stayed neutral. You're allowed to bring a statement to the hearing. Statement. Yes. You may speak for 2 minutes on record before the judge begins disposition. Jayla closed her eyes. Thank you. That night, she sat at the kitchen table long after Dorian went to bed. The screwdriver, the one from his locker, was on the table. She'd retrieved it from his backpack. Old, blunt, tip worn down. Not a weapon, just a kid's broken headphone tool. She took out a notepad and began writing. Not for school, not for apology, but for court. Because the school had erased her son, and now the court wanted to brand him. So she wrote every word like it mattered. Because this time, it did. Tuesday, 9:57 a.m. They sat side by side at the kitchen table. Dorian wore a clean hoodie. His hair was combed. His eyes distant. The laptop screen blinked. Juvenile Court, Division 4A. Judge Connors presiding. At exactly 10 a.m., the session began. Good morning. Case number J24891. Minor, Dorian Harvell. Charge, intent to threaten bodily harm on school property. Jayla gripped her hands in her lap. Judge Connors, mid-50s, silver tie, unreadable expression, looked straight into the camera. Is the prosecution present? Yes, Your Honor. Danielle Price, Juvenile Counsel. Price's voice was flat, professional, untouched by doubt. The facts are as follows. On April 11th, the defendant was found in possession of a flathead screwdriver inside his school locker. Combined with prior verbal conflict and behavioral documentation, the district has referred the case for formal review. Jayla bit the inside of her cheek. Has the minor or guardian submitted a statement? The judge asked. Price answered, Not yet. Jayla unmuted. I have one, Your Honor. He nodded. You may proceed. 2 minutes. She leaned closer to the camera. My name is Jayla Harvell. I am Dorian's mother, and I want the record to show that this is not justice. It's labeling. She continued. My son brought a tool to school when he used to fix his headphones. The school chose to interpret it as a weapon, without threat, without violence, without intent. She paused, watching her words echo back at her through the screen. They searched him without cause. Called the police before they called me. Isolated him. Questioned him without legal counsel. Then tried to coerce a withdrawal to cover their record. The prosecutor shifted. And when we didn't comply, they punished him for it. She looked into the lens like it was a window. Your Honor, I'm not here to make excuses. I'm here to remind this court that race, silence, and fear should never be enough to open a file on a child. She finished quietly. Especially not mine. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loud. Judge Connors blinked once, then turned to Price. Is there additional evidence beyond the screwdriver and the student's statement? No, Your Honor. But based on policy. I read the policy. He paused. And I want the record to reflect. The object in question was not a blade. Not a replica. Not modified. And the alleged statement was not recorded, documented, or confirmed by a neutral party. Jayla's chest tightened. The judge continued. Disposition hearing is scheduled for next Friday. This court will issue a formal decision then. The screen blinked. Session ended. Dorian whispered. What does that mean? She stared at the dark screen. It means we're still standing. Thursday, 2:12 p.m. An email arrived from a name she hadn't seen since the panel. Principal Alford. Subject. Reconsideration of educational pathways. Jayla opened it slowly. Ms. Harvell. Given the recent escalation of the matter into the legal system, the school is prepared to offer an alternative placement for Dorian, effective immediately. This would allow us to preserve his academic record while disengaging from disciplinary tracking. We believe this is in the best interest of all parties. Principal M. Alford. She stared at the phrase. Disengaging from disciplinary tracking. No apology. No admission of error. Just removal. Displacement. A quieter version of expulsion. She closed her laptop without replying. 3 hours later, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Ms. Harvell. This is Principal Alford. I just wanted to personally follow up. She cut in. You didn't call me before calling the police on my son. Why now? A pause. I thought we could discuss options. You mean your options? I believe we can avoid a formal court record if we agree on educational reassignment. Dorian didn't do anything wrong. Ms. Harvell, this doesn't have to be about right or wrong. It's about resolution. She smiled coldly. You know, you keep using these soft words. Reassignment, disengagement, pathways. But none of them mean accountability. We're trying to help. No, you're trying to disappear him in a way that protects your paperwork. Another silence. Alfred's voice dropped. If you proceed to court and things go badly, this could affect Dorian's future options. You mean your school's liability. Ms. Harvell. Save it. You didn't protect my son when he was accused. You don't get to negotiate now that people are watching. She ended the call. That evening, she found Dorian in his room. Backpack half-zipped. Laptop open. He was rereading old science notes. She sat on the floor next to him. He didn't say anything, just rested his head on her shoulder. After a moment, he asked, If they try again, can we stop them? She looked at him. We already did. He nodded, then whispered, Promise. She held his hand tighter. Promise. That night she filed a formal statement with the juvenile court, demanding full dismissal. She attached copies of the school handbook. She listed every procedural breach. She included Devin Carr's affidavit. And she ended with one sentence. You may label the file, the behavior, the incident, but you don't get to label my child. Then she clicked send and waited. Friday, 10 a.m. Same screen, same virtual courtroom. But the air felt different now. Dorian sat up straighter. Jayla's notepad was full, but her hands were still. Judge Connors appeared on screen. Good morning. Case J, 24891. We are convened to deliver disposition. Prosecutor Price was already present. Your Honor, the state maintains its position. While we acknowledge the object was not weaponized, and the witness testimony offers some nuance, we believe the combination of language, behavior, and object presence warrants official record. Jayla raised an eyebrow. Nuance. She didn't speak. Not yet. Judge Connors nodded. I've reviewed all submitted documentation, including the updated handbook excerpt, the affidavit from the student witness, and the school's procedural timeline. He turned to Jayla. Ms. Harvell, would you like to make a closing remark? She nodded once. No defense. Just truth. He gestured. Go ahead. She looked directly into the camera. When this started, I thought we were dealing with fear. But fear doesn't file charges. Fear doesn't quote policy. She paused. Fear steps aside. What we faced was something else. Something practiced. Measured. Cold. She looked down briefly at Dorian's hand, folded tightly in his lap. You were asked to evaluate a child based on whether he might do something. But that's not justice. That's prediction. That's fiction. Then she added. And fiction should never be enough to stain someone for life. Silence. Judge Connors tapped his pen. The court finds no cause for further action. The charge is dismissed in full. This case is closed. Dorian exhaled audibly. Jayla squeezed his hand. But the judge wasn't done. He looked directly at the screen. I also recommend that the district review its disciplinary practices and file handling for racial equity compliance. This court is not blind to patterns. The prosecutor froze. Jayla didn't smile. She didn't speak. She just let the words land. Later that day, an email arrived from the school. Ms. Harvell. In light of the court's decision, we are prepared to revisit Dorian's educational status and welcome him back to an adjusted academic track. She read it once, then deleted it. Dorian sat on the porch that evening, sketching circuits into an old notebook. Jayla joined him. He looked up. They said I can come back. I know. He waited. Should I? She sat beside him. That's her choice. He didn't answer right away. Then, I think I want something else. She nodded. And for the first time in weeks, her voice softened. Then we'll build it. Saturday. No alarms. No uniforms. No appointments. Dorian slept until noon. Jayla didn't wake him. She sat by the window, sipping old coffee, reading the letter again. Case dismissed. Record sealed. No permanent entry. The system would forget. But she wouldn't. At 2:40 p.m., she opened the closet and pulled out a box labeled 7th grade projects. Inside were his old science boards, broken headphones, a half-soldered circuit. She found the screwdriver. Blunt. Worn. Just like before. She placed it in a smaller box. Taped it shut. Labeled it. Not evidence. That evening, she found Dorian outside, fixing the chain on his bike. He looked up, grease on his fingers. Mom. Yeah. I think I want to try that robotics club. She smiled. The one at the community center? Yeah. They said I could come by Monday. She didn't hesitate. Then we'll go. He paused. Even after? All of it? She nodded. They didn't define you. You did. At 6:15 p.m., her phone buzzed again. Email. Same subject line. Follow-up. Enrollment reinstatement available. She archived it without opening. They had their chance, and they used it to erase him. Now, she was done chasing places that only saw parts of her son. At 9:32 p.m., she turned off all the lights. For the first time in 3 weeks, her body relaxed before sleep. No judge. No policy. No label. Just her. And the boy in the next room, still whole. Sunday morning, they walked together to the library. No destination. Just shelves. He picked a book about circuits. She found one on juvenile law. They didn't talk about court. They didn't talk about school. They just read. No medals. No press. No applause. Just survival. Just recovery. And just enough light to start again.